come to join us this early, fully caffeinated, and ready to have a great conversation about decaffeination. Now, as you know, if you've met me at any events or you've seen some of our tutorials where we've featured our decafs, you know that a lot of folks in the Batdorf family are really strong proponents of decaffeination, because we know that the same coffees that that you're having with caffeine, those are the same coffees that we're having decaffeinated. But a question people always ask is, how do we remove the caffeine and protect the integrity of all the hard work that goes into sourcing great coffee? Well, luckily, you don't have to rely on me for answers today, because, of course, I brought in the kind of person who can speak to this. I brought in our dear friend, Bob Benck. Bob, good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing great, Josh. Once again, thanks for having me. And hopefully I won't have to answer any of these decaffeination questions, because I, in turn, have a very special guest this morning. David Kastle, the green coffee buyer for Swiss Water Decaf, based in Burnaby or Vancouver, BC, just our friends just north of the border. Welcome, Dave.
Bob, Josh, thanks for the invite. Nice to be here.
Yeah. It's great to have you here. You know, we've tried to have a staff trip up to visit all y'all, because you've been very welcoming and hospitable and offering to have us up. But it looks like this is the way we get to have a conversation with you, and I think it's great because we get you all to ourselves for about 20 or 30 minutes. So that's awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yes. Sorry, and I promise I did not create a global pandemic to keep you out of Canada.
Okay, well, I'll check that off the list of questions. Good.
Yeah.
So, Bob, tell me a little bit about how it is you've built a relationship with Swiss Water and how Batdorf has, and then maybe that will give us some opportunities to have David talk a little bit more about the process.
Yeah. So you mentioned something that we do at Batdorf and Bronson, which is basically we take some of our existing green inventory, and we do what's called a modified toll roast Swiss Water, where we'll send them the greens, they'll decaffeinate it for us and send it back to us. That's not for all our coffee. We do purchase coffee directly from them that's decaffeinated as well. And David can speak to the quality control that they do up in the lab there at Swiss Water to make sure that those coffees are what their customers are looking for. But specifically for us, our certified coffees are Fair Trade Organic Peru Decaf, and also the coffee that goes into our Whirling Dervish Decaf. Our coffees that come from the Aprocasi Co-op in Peru, which is the same coffee that we've offered green or in a non-decaffeinated version in the past. However, the flip side to that is coffees that go into, for example, our Dancing Goat Decaf is coffees that Swiss Water carries in their inventory that we purchase direct from them. So I kind of want to get, Dave talking about, his role. Josh, you mentioned the tour that we wanted to do with employees. That'd be awesome at some point, or maybe at some point during this little chat today, we can get Dave to commit to a virtual tour of the plant. But let's. I'm just going to open the floor to you, Dave, and just talk to us about what you do, what Swiss Water does. And I'll just kind of interject a little bit how that relates to Batdorf as we're moving along.
Thanks, Bob. So let's see how fast I can do all this. So I'm going to start by giving you a little background about Swiss Water. I am going to talk a little bit about the process itself. I'm going to talk about coffee sourcing, and then like kind of the bigger picture, just our attitude about how we feel about ourselves, about the company, and what we do. So historically, Swiss Water, it's called the Swiss Water Process because in the 1970s, a Swiss company called Jakob Suchard, which at the time also owned Toblerone, Jakob Suchard was a coffee player in Europe, and they decided they were going to build a pilot decaffeination plant in a place called Schaffhausen, Switzerland, which I'm pretty sure is where Sherlock Holmes dies when he falls off a cliff into the falls. Anyway, I digress. So Schaffhausen, they build this pilot plant.
Falls, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm not the nerdiest one in the room. So so they build this pilot plant in the 70s. Jakob Suchard happens to own a Canadian coffee company called Nabob Coffee, which at the time was kind of the Canadian equivalent of a Folgers or a Maxwell House. 1980s, Jakobs decides to build a full-size decaffeination line inside the Nabob roasting plant. So they build it, and about 2 hours later, they get bored, and they sell Nabob to Kraft Canada. Kraft Canada really wanted the Nabob brand, so they were happy to take it on. They sold off the roasting equipment, and after a few years, a number of years, they decided they didn't really want to own a decaffeination plant. And they spun it off as an independent, standalone, publicly traded company. So since 1999 or 2000, I think since 2000, Swiss Water has been this independent, publicly traded company, no relationship to anyone else, with this really solidly commercial background. Fast forward to like 2008 or so, Swiss Water's operations manager leaves. They hire a new operations manager who has no food background, no coffee background, but he is a process guru. And he spends 2 years, a year and a half, parsing the process, trying to understand everything that happens in the process and why it does what it does. And after a year and a half, he found himself asking, why does our process temperature vary so much at different stages of the process by as much as basically like 30 degrees Celsius? So that's like 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And he decides, just as a trial, let's just stabilize the temperature across the process at its lowest number. Does that instantly, like overnight, the color of Swiss Water Process unroasted decaf starts to look like green coffee instead of roasted coffee. And all of a sudden, there's all this flavor in there that wasn't there before. So it's these dramatic improvements, and it was a real proof of concept that's led to another 10 or 12 years now of continual improvements of the process that have helped to further maintain all the flavors and characteristics inherent to that green coffee, and also make it easier to roast and extend the shelf life of that coffee. So we validate these improvements by our own internal cupping. Our director of coffee in Vancouver is a Q instructor, is the person who runs the cupping lab, is also a Q instructor. Mike Strump, the director, is also a World Coffee Events head judge trainer. So he's super well known in the industry. They're both very well known. So they have good palates. They're very good at validating. We do a pre and post process comparison of every batch we run to ensure that we're preserving quality and scoring coffees not only on body and acidity and flavor, but also on likeness, how true that decaf is to the coffee that went in. And then sideways from this, in a very scientific way, we are periodically taking samples of coffees before and after they've been processed and sending them out to independent labs like University of British Columbia or British Columbia Institute of Technology or University of Guelph, all Canadian, of course, and having them run panels of chlorogenic and amino acids to see what our retention is of these polyphenols throughout the process. And what we're finding is these days we're maintaining about a 98% retention of all these organic components that are what make up the flavor and character of coffee.
Yeah. So if I could interject here for a second,
yeah.
Dave. Yeah, having been, roasting for Bratdorf for going on over 20 years, I remember the times when we had other types of decaf in the house. It wasn't always Swiss Water decaf. It was kind of like we had an offering of decafs that was different processes. And I'm not going to say that the process itself was what would influence the flavor. But yeah, I think just speaking to your visual appearance and ease or consistency in roast, just how dramatically those coffees have changed. And since, did you say 2008 was when you were really, or 2010 was when you were really?
In spring of 2009, I think it was. I was a coffee trader at the time, and Swiss Water sent me samples saying, "Oh, we've made some changes to the process. What do you think?" And my first thought was, is this really the right sample? Because it doesn't look like Swiss Water. It doesn't taste like Swiss Water. So it was a stunning improvement.
Yeah. So, you and I are familiar with how those greens used to look versus what they look like now. Some of our customers might remember, as we had a Swiss Water Decaf Mexico. And, I think all of us would agree that, the coffee came out. And I mean, you could do a really light, gentle roast on these coffees. And, you ended up getting like these tiny little Kingsford charcoal looking, real kind of matte black. And it was hard coffee to roast. And, there was also some references to, the fire hazard, just because a lot of times like little chips and stuff were coming off of it. But yeah, so definitely visually and from a cup profile standpoint, the process has improved quite a bit. And as a result of that, I think it was 2011-ish, maybe 12. We switched all of our decaf purchases to be exclusive Swiss Water. It had mostly to do with the quality that we get from it, but being a company that's also always conscious of our environmental impact and sustainability decisions, it made the most sense as well from an environmental standpoint. And this is when, we start talking about some of what those other decaffeination processes are, the KBW, methylene chloride, some of the chemicals that are used, and other decaffeination processes. Even though we never really thought that as a consumer you were being exposed to those, I'm not worried about poisoning a customer with methylene chloride. But the people that have to work with those chemicals and the communities that have to dispose of those post process and such, it just makes sense to not only just keep it local. I mean, you guys are real close to us, but also to just kind of mitigate some of the sustainability impacts that might be associated with these other decaf processes.
Well, there's a lot in what you just said, and this question of sustainability and sustainability responsibility have become they've bubbled up for us. Several years ago we sat down and looked in the mirror and tried to figure out who we were, and came to the conclusion that we didn't see ourselves as a decaffeination company. We saw ourselves as a coffee company that sells amazing coffee without caffeine. And then we started looking beyond that. We put a lot of effort into improving the quality of the green that we were sourcing for our own inventories, and the QA, or the QC rather, of those green purchases. And then we started looking deeper into traceability, trying to understand, as much as we could about the producers or producer groups or regions and environmental concerns in those areas. And then we started thinking about this concept of choice. We decided that one thing we believe in is a consumer's right to choose. And among other things, it's choose a coffee, it's choose a decaf, it's the right to choose a decaf that that minimizes or has essentially a zero environmental impact. So, like you said, with a chemical process decaf, the residual tolerances for those chemicals, as laid out by USDA guidelines, are what are below risk to consumer. People working with those ingredients, it's a different story because methylene chloride is a known carcinogen. A lot of like Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace Hardware have banned methylene chloride based products in their stores. Ethyl acetate, super combustible. Carbon dioxide, there was a death a couple years ago in a CO2 plant when someone was asphyxiated. I mean, there's risk, but also for us, we feel there are flavor impact from a lot of those decaffeination processes that, if we can provide a decaf that has no impact or no added flavors to the coffee, that's a win for us. We certainly, as a chemical-free plant, we do not add any chemical residuals, which is nice. People are more aware. People are more aware of what they're consuming, and they're more aware of environmental impact.
Yeah. All right. So
I wanted to, if I could pop in for just a second and tag on to this, David. So you're talking about process. I do know that you provided a little chart, and I know often what people ask me when I'm out and I might be repping the decaf at a grocery store or somewhere else, people want to know what Swiss Water means. I'm wondering, could you help us all just for a second and just talk really basically through what the process actually is so that folks can kind of get their heads around it?
Absolutely. So at the basis of our process, there's a liquid we call green coffee extract, or GCE, green coffee extract. And green coffee extract is clean water from the British Columbia Coast Mountain Range, just outside of Vancouver, fully saturated with all the water-soluble solids in green coffee except for caffeine. So it's sucrose, it's chlorogenic acids, it's amino acids, it's all these polyphenols. Everything except for the caffeine. Roughly 26% by weight of a green coffee bean is water-soluble solids. So now we take this liquid that's fully loaded with all these soluble solids, and we circulate it through vessels holding green coffee. So we take, for example, Peru from apricot. We rehydrate it because all decaffeination requires rehydration. So we take this green coffee and use warm water to swell it up. It opens the pores. It allows access to caffeine. We then circulate this green coffee extract through the green coffee beans. And because the GCE is fully loaded with everything but caffeine and everything wants equilibrium, caffeine will migrate from the green coffee into the GCE. And without getting too complicated, once the GCE is loaded with caffeine, the GCE, green coffee extract, goes into very special carbon filtration. We use an activated carbon that we've designed to be caffeine specific. The caffeine then leaves the GCE and goes into the carbon. The GCE is clean again. It's everything but the caffeine, goes back into the green coffee, and we keep cycling like this until we hit our target number. So our guarantee is our coffee is 99.9% caffeine free. The carbon, once it's fully loaded with the GCE, we actually run it through super high temperature furnaces, high temperature varying pressure rates. And what that does is destroys the caffeine and restores the geometry of the carbon to maintain its caffeine specificity. The reason we do this instead of harvesting the caffeine for resale is the only cost-effective way to do it would be to use methylene chloride. So we're chemical-free. We want to maintain chemical-free. So we miss out on a revenue stream, but we maintain our guarantee. This does make us the only decaffeination company in the world that only does chemical-free processing.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting, Dave. I I guess we always think about what do you do with caffeine when you're done, and as you mentioned, harvesting or recovering that caffeine. People may or may not know, oftentimes that is sold to pharmaceutical companies that use it in aspirin and other pain relief medications and such. So not the case with Swiss Water.
Yeah, energy drinks too. I mean, I'm actually going on a road trip tomorrow, and I would love to have a certified organic Red Bull with me, but it's not going to happen. So,
and when I'm trying to explain this to employees and customers, like you mentioned the migration of the caffeine from the existing coffee to the green coffee extract, that's kind of like osmosis, right? It's higher concentration, lower concentration. And that cycle is you keep doing that until those concentrations are equal. And in this case, equal at 99% caffeine free. And then the other aspect of that I always like to kind of get people to, go way back in the past to their, high school chemistry class is, how that carbon attaches to the caffeine molecule. And they're kind of like puzzle pieces, right? So if you get the right shape, as the caffeine goes through, they'll fit together and they'll bond and they'll grab each other. So yeah, I just, as I'm always trying to do with my kids right now, is when they're asking me, when am I ever going to have to do this in real life? I'm always able to give them real life situations where this stuff that they're learning in school will be used. And this is something that when I'm talking to, new employees and such, it's like, yeah, you remember in chemistry, you should have paid attention, and this would make more sense.
That's really funny. For me, it's why should I learn algebra? And then I drag them over to my computer and pop open an Excel and show them a formula.
Say, all people, Dave, you of all people should be able to give a very good, solid, real life example of that one. So, all right. Well, that kind of speaks to your other role, which is, being the green coffee buyer. Same role that I serve for Backdorf. You serve for Swiss Water. So, let's hear about it.
Coffee is delicious, and I like it. So yeah, actually, again, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Swiss Water had a more commercial focus. And when I came on, because my background was in specialty trading, I took it as my mandate to try and, first of all, improve the qualities of the coffee we were buying, because we wanted to move more significantly into relationships with specialty roasters and specialty importers. So, and to me, and I think to you, a big part of getting better quality coffee is having better relationship with producers. Apricossi has been around, and Peru has been around for a very long time. They've always had a great reputation. It's a country where most of the coffee is, certainly most of the coffee with certification is produced by grower groups. So that's just opportunity. It's opportunity to understand how coffee is produced in different countries and how to guide them to find places to improve. I'm definitely not someone who will go to a coffee farmer and tell them how to grow coffee or how to harvest coffee or even how to process coffee, but I might offer suggestions on how to expedite it, how to store it, because these are things that I have in my background. And then, of course, the better the coffee is when it ships, the more money the producers will get, the more successful they'll be. And that is actually takes us back to sustainability, because one of the pillars of sustainability is profitability for the person who grows a product.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. And, we talk a lot about quality, obviously. And I think Josh, mentioned this first thing in the broadcast today. Used to be, it was just kind of a side note, there was your caffeinated coffee and there was your decaf, and nobody put much thought or effort into making the decaf taste good. And I as well have been one that's always thought, you know, you're not drinking decaf because you obviously don't need a caffeine, buzz. You're drinking decaf because you like coffee, right? You like the taste of coffee, and you don't want the effects of the caffeine. So, in my opinion, the decaf drinkers are some of the most discerning coffee drinkers out there because they're drinking it for the flavor of the coffee.
Discerning and disrespected, yeah.
Yep, you got it.
Not if I have anything to say.
No,
about
I mean,
it.
this is
the two D's.
Thank you, John.
But yeah, so and I agree. In this instance with apricot, I can only sell. I don't know if we had that coffee as a non-decaffeinated version in house. All year. We might go through like 50 bags coffee, maybe more. I don't know. We've never had it as a full-time offer, but having that coffee on offer all the time as decaf provides market opportunity for a lot of producers. So I guess this is a question from me to you. Your discerning and disrespected comment about decaf drinkers. Do you ever kind of get the fisheye when you're buying coffee, when someone's like, it's decaf? We don't want to sell to that guy.
Well, no, because everyone wants to sell coffee. My boss a couple years ago, or a couple jobs ago, reminded me on a regular basis that coffee is for selling. But this concept of respect for the product and respect for decaf, traditionally, old school, because decaf is a process and process has a cost. There's literally the processing cost, and then when you process decaf, you lose some volume. So there's a shrinkage involved. So traditionally, companies would use lower quality coffee and the cheapest possible process to mitigate the additional cost of decaffeination. Because when you go to the supermarket, and you don't want, like if you're selling, cans of coffee, you don't want to have to charge more for the decaf can, although they will sometimes, that can will have a lower fill weight to it. So, for years and years and years, forever, decaf was an inferior coffee product to regular coffee. Then you get into the 80s and 90s when consumers started to move away from really commercial coffee and learn about specialty coffee, learn how good coffee could be. That same demographic eventually reached a point where a lot of them were starting to add decaf to their coffee regimen, but they were put off by the flavor of the decaf. And in turn, that was the impetus for specialty coffee companies to start using better quality coffees and better quality process. It's massive. It's totally massive. We buy a lot of market data sets from the National Coffee Association and the European Coffee Association. We've commissioned our own study logic surveys across North America. And interestingly, the top reason people don't want to try decaf is they're afraid it's going to taste bad. And that's just this, historical memory of how decaf is bad from taking a sip from, grandma's cup. So these days, I'm pulling these numbers from my head, but these days I want to say 42% of American coffee consumers consume decaf at least once a week, either as decaf or half calf. They may be most of the time drinking regular, but they drink decaf in the afternoon and evening. There's a lot of reasons why people switch back and forth. So you've got this huge, pretty significant, coffee consuming demographic that's drinking decaf, and the age group that are the greatest consumers of decaf are millennials. They're Gen Z and millennial, which is completely contrary to, all the decaf marketing forever, that decaf is for old people and sick people and pregnant women. Like if you're drinking decaf, obviously you're weak, right? But it turns out it's the younger, more palate savvy demographic that just, they see decaf as just another coffee product because they've grown up with decaf that tasted good, that tasted like coffee. Yeah, caffeine is a bitter alkaloid compound. That's all it is. So, you remove caffeine, you still, everything indicates that uh, all the other base compounds that are present in green coffee and then convert into yet still more and more complex and roasted coffees, they transition. They maintain, from what I have read, and we all know I'm no scientist, in terms of health benefits. The health benefit studies associated with coffee are not tied to caffeine. They're agnostic to caffeine. They're not caffeine related at all. It's about everything else in the coffee. So this is part of why we look into these panels of polyphenols to ensure that our process is in line with green coffee.
Yeah. All right. So currently we offer our certified Peru, our Whirling Dervish in a decaf version, and also a Dancing Goat decaf. So, if somebody out there is watching or listening and you're looking around on our website, those are the 3 different coffees or decaffeinated coffees that we currently have in our lineup. I have gotten some input or some requests from customers and retail managers and employees about maybe adding to that lineup, perhaps having David, I'm sure we do just kind of rotating guest. We call it our Voyager line of coffees. So I'm always open to suggestions here as to what other decafs customers would like to see. I know I asked you before we actually started the broadcast today about, which fancy pants coffee have you put through the system up there. And, we've had some Kenyan coffees decaffeinated before. That's one that, is definitely something different than what we offer. So you got anything you're super excited about in the Swiss Water lineup, or something that's coming down the pike that our customers or me, here at Batdorf might be interested in?
I got your hookup, Bob. So we have a pretty solid list of standard products that we offer out into the roasting world. And then we also, every couple months, we'll do a small batch where it'll be a minimum size production run of something exceptional. So actually right now, I think we have a organic Guatemala Cimarron Entre Rios. We sourced from our friend Edwin in Bellingham. Following that, we've got a very interesting woman in coffee project with coffee from Burundi, I think we're going to be running that in a month or so. We've got some real funky Indian coffee coming up. Hasn't shipped from India yet. So we cycle through very interesting products. We'll occasionally do like a super high-end organic natural Ethiopia if you want something crazy fruity. There is opportunity. We've been doing this for a few years now, really as kind of a proof of concept to say, look what we can do. Give us your best, give us a really good coffee, and oh look, you have a really good coffee. It just doesn't have caffeine anymore. So there's we'll take it offline and we'll talk about it, and we'll send you some samples and see if
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Throw something else on the truck.
Pass those along, and yeah, I mean, like I said, we get questions from customers about other potential offers. So when you say minimum run, is that similar to what our toll decaf would be? Something that goes in at about 50 plus bags, and then
yeah. So our process, every decaffeination plant has a minimum volume they can fit in, and they also have specific numbers that toll volumes increase in based on the size of the vessels being used. And so looking not just for efficiency, but also quality improvement. Any system works, in my opinion, systems work best when you're using them at an optimal number. So for us, this would be, roughly 7,500 pounds of coffee going in. And so it's, so call it 50 bags of coffee, and a typical container of coffee is 275 bags.
Yeah.
So this is a really small number, and we just, it's the kind of thing that we'll deal out piecemeal globally to a handful of roasters, just who want something they can show off.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of going down that road towards, I would think at least that you guys, knowing, how many coffee roasters there are out there, that you wouldn't have too difficult a time getting a good turn on those types of coffees. So, okay, well, yeah, keep us in mind, and send along some samples, and hopefully I could bear some news to our customers. I see Josh smiling over there. He wants a new exciting decaf.
Oh no, I'm just I'm laughing because I'm letting people know that they are actually getting to watch the sausage get made, as it were, here as we listen to both of you talk. You're literally watching two green coffee traders discuss the market. So hey, lucky for you for showing up. And I'm also talking while I'm trying to reorient these screens, which just blew up on me. So I thought I'd show my face instead. But you didn't need to know about that. This is fascinating. I think that again I learned something new today. This idea that that we have a portion of the decaf drinking population that is not my age, that's younger, that's like a shocking to me. And so I'm really glad that I was able to get that piece of information from you today, David. I mean, because it seriously, I'm a little bit gobsmacked. I just, to use that word.
Well, the theory behind that is that the cafe is a third place, right? So it's not home, it's not work, it's the place where you hang out. And this, basically like 20 to 40-year-olds grew up with this. And so it continues in their life, and they love coffee, and they want to keep drinking coffee, and they want to be in this cafe. So, but they also, it's a demographic that's more aware of what they're consuming. So including the amount of caffeine they intake, because also there's more ways to consume caffeine than there used to be, because there's energy drinks and there's caffeinated energy bars and just coffee flour, all these things.
And tea has become more popular as a category too, right? Probably.
I've heard of tea. and cold brew. You know,
Oh, cold brew, yeah.
and of course, cold brew has generally 2 to 3 times the caffeine in it as drip coffee. So they are turning towards decaf as a way to maintain the place they want to be and drink what they want to drink, but not, explode from caffeine overdose. Now, with the last like 3.5 months of coronavirus nightmare, and a lot of cafes either closed or doing reduced service, so we see, for us, we see our customers shifting less from on-site beverage sale to whole bean coffee for at-home brewing. In a lot of cases, we're actually seeing decaf volumes increase.
Yeah.
So that desire to keep drinking decaf or reduced caffeine coffee went home with these people.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're getting up on time here. Dave, thanks for taking the time to come join us. Great to reconnect. I know we've been trying to do it in a non-virtual format here for a while. Hopefully we can make that happen here again soon. Josh, you got some closing input here?
Is there a song? Does this end with a song or something?
We'll end with a song.
We got some theme music that we'll roll out.
I'll play us out.
But yeah, thanks.
On acoustic music for sure. If you go back and watch this on our Facebook, you'll see that I'm struggling to recapture Zoom reconfiguring everything in the middle of the stream. But you look great now. Yeah. There's one comment that came through here from people watching, which is what death before decaf. So I guess that would be the one thing I would say. I continue to be a big proponent of our decafs, and it's great to know that specialty coffee roasters like Batdorf have been able to play a part in that, and we're so glad that we have a partner that we've obviously been able to work with for so long, who shares so many of our same environmental impact concerns as well as our quality concerns. It just makes it easier for folks like me to go out and just crow about how great this coffee is. So I'm as grateful to watch the conversation today.
Yeah, and don't worry, Dave. We'll put a trace on that death before decaf comment, and we'll find out which Swiss Water employee it was. Okay.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You know what? They're all chipped. It was all part of the vaccine, so we're good.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm gonna say goodbye and end the call and finish with my little pitch here for folks who are watching. And we look forward to again visiting you, David, and Bob. I'll see you next week probably.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. So, folks, thank you so much. I know that it was a little bit wacky there near the end. I apologize for that. Sometimes, I'm capturing the Zoom feed into the streaming software, and if something changes over there, it then kind of messes with my windows here. But we made it through it. Now, this is that part of my broadcast where I always want to remind you. Now, we've put some links up into the comments here, specifically a page where you can go to look at the decafs that we have. Today, I was enjoying this lovely Peru. You heard David mention it a couple of times. And I wanted to make sure that you can go to the link and use our discount code, which is Watch and Learn 10. I also wanted to, if I can get a second here, bring in this. I wonder if I can bring in this this website here. I think I'm gonna just have to go to slideshow, and I'm gonna change this out. I'm gonna bring in this map. So if you go to Swiss Water and type in wherever you are, they have built this lovely tool which allows you to see. You can see the beautiful big dot there for us. That's Batdorf and Bronson is listed. It shows all the places that you can get Swiss Water Decaf. What a great tool. So I know that a lot of folks are, look, that's Lacey, that's our dancing goats and Lacey, of course. A lot of folks are going to be taking road trips. And so just I wanted to make sure you knew about this tool that they've created, which is so helpful. If you're on a road trip and you really want to find a place that respects coffee, which I think we've established about Swiss Water Process, then you can be assured that the place you're going to go to is using that same process with those same important issues of environmental impact, as well as the health impacts of the Swiss water, and respecting the coffee underneath it. Right, the whole process really built into the desire to have all those flavors as present as possible, even when we've removed the caffeine. Go on to Swiss Water and check out that map that they have for you. That way, when you're traveling, you can find a place that has Swiss Water Process Decaf. I hope that when you're traveling, that brings you down to Olympia and Lacey, where we have Dancing Goats coffee bars. Soon Tacoma. We're getting prepared to open our Point Ruston location in Tacoma. And then, of course, in Atlanta. If you're in Atlanta, you visit any of our 4 awesome stores there. I hope that's where your road takes you. And if not, by all means, have it take you on to, I'm going to use a term that totally shows my age, on the information superhighway. Laugh it up. Yeah, we used to call it that. If you're not on the road to those locations where you can visit our stores, please try our decaf by going online and using Watch and Learn 10. I'll thank again our friends at Swiss Water Process. They're such great partners. We're so lucky that we get to continue to build a relationship with them. And as Bob was kind of alluding to near the end there, maybe we're looking at finding a really specialty decaf that we can highlight, which is not to say that our other decafs aren't, of course, amazing specialty coffees, but really finding something where we can just take another step in continuing to help our customers understand how special decaf coffees can be for all the flavor and the qualities that you want in a cup of coffee, that we can have that and enjoy it at any time of the day, right? So thanks again for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to continuing to see you here as we learn how to turn our homes into cafes.